Well, right now we're confronted with a combination of a very large wave of anti-labor sentiment that's been pumped up beginning in the States and now spreading to Canada, primarily by a group of billionaires who have decided that they would be better off if there were no labor unions.
What other country on the planet gives corporations the tax break if they move jobs out of the country? Tell me it. Does Germany give you a tax break if you leave Germany? Does France? Does China? Does Japan? Does Brazil? Which country gives you a tax break if you leave the country? Only one. United States of America.
Especially in the 19th century, the Pinkertons were, they had a larger standing army than the U.S. government at that point. It's a private army that is out there for hire, able to come in and assert themselves. So there was already this pattern out there prior to 1892 of the Pinkertons coming in with Henry Clay Frick and others into the coal fields and the coke fields, into other mills, of pretty much, kind of splitting heads and being very violent rather than coming in to keep the peace.
We had a peculiar institution here that nobody else had called the Coal and Iron Police, which were quasi-state police, but hired by private companies completely and paid for and housed by private companies, but had state power. Nobody else had this, and they were much more dangerous and worse for Pennsylvania. The Pinkertons, they controlled the coal fields. In the Mon Valley, they were the ones who were largely the backbone of this 25,000 armed men that U.S. Steel controlled with the coal and irons. And they weren't overthrown till the 30s.
There were 60 people in the room, women and children as well as men, in Oklahoma City, trying to start an oil workers' union. 6 men came in with overcoats on, and they didn't take their overcoats off. They just stood against the back wall. And the organizer leaned over to me and Woody Guthrie, the other singer there. Woody was the extraordinary man who wrote "This Land Is Your Land" and several thousand other songs. He says, those men don't take off their overcoats. They may have clubs under them. They may be intending to break up the meeting. See if you can get the crowd singing. Well, we did get them all singing, the women and kids too. And they never did break up the meeting. Afterwards, they came forward and said, this is a different kind of a meeting than we were told it was going to be. We were told you were a bunch of communists who wanted to overthrow the government.
You've got cops, firemen, paramedics out there doing the job for minimum wage. How many of those teachers have a master's degree in education? How many of them have been on the job for 20 years? How many of those cops are laying down their life? How many of those firemen are laying down their life going into a fire or protecting the community as a law enforcement officer? And the paramedics that are out there, this is this is sinful. It really is.
The issue of unions causing job losses is absolutely ridiculous and of injuring the economy. The fact of the matter is that as unions are successful in driving wages up and benefits up, there's a corresponding increase in wages and benefits in non-union workplaces.
Out in the Midwest where I'm from, in Oklahoma, it used to be a Democratic state, now it's a solid red state. But you have people who own the newspapers in that area, just a constant pounding about labor bosses from back east, or like we're criminals or things. And as I said earlier, it's just a total conjecture, a picture that's been painted by the right-wing media and the Chamber of Commerce and different entities, right-to-work committees, saying that, oh, these big bosses up in D.C., they don't care about the average worker. You can't be further than truth. You would not go through the strain and stress that we have as presidents of these large organizations representing people if you truly did not care and worry about the future of the workers in this country.
That right to collective bargaining, that right to try to improve your pay and working conditions is not only important to the union members, but very important to the general public. In fact, it was, I believe, the foundation of the middle class of this country. Right now, we don't have that, and what we're watching is a collapse of the middle class. And I think it's important that individuals understand that they don't need to stand alone, that they can stand together with others and work to improve their lot in life, and that's what they need to do.
So the company comes in, it builds housing for the workers, it sets up a school, it sets up a church, but it also runs the church, it runs the school, it runs the housing, it owns the church, it owns the school, and it pays the worker, but it pays the worker in script, not in real wages, in script that the workers can only spend at the company store, where the company sets the cost of the goods. So it creates, under the umbrella of benevolence, a form of paternalism that was more about control than anything else.
George Bear made a statement that the men of labor should basically get down on their knees and thank God for men like us that were here to give you work. This is almost like the divine right of kings that they fought over here before the Magna Carta and what have you over in England. So you had a mindset that we're the ones that put this business together, and they deserve to make a profit. But to what extent you deserve to make a profit, the point here where you have to you subjugate people here to the point where they're slaves. And basically that's what they were. They were kind of in an economic merry-go-round that they couldn't get out of. No schools. Don't build a school in the area, because if you educated your workforce, you'd lose your laboring class.
It was basically the Molly Maguires were set up to be the sacrificial lambs to get rid of the WBA, which they did, to weaken the ancient order of the AOH, or Ancient Order of Hibernians, and to set examples of what would happen if you defied the companies and their coal and iron police. And also it has a political part of it too, because the Molly Maguires were tied to a degree, put out by Gowan and others, to the Democratic Party, and all the miners' companies, all the big shots were all Republicans. So you have a lot of reasons for these people to be set up to take the fall.
A good example of this is the Walton family, which runs Walmart. I believe 6 members of the Walton family are worth as much as the bottom 30% of all Americans combined. That inequality is unseen and unheard of in the history of this country.
Those folks who don't want labor unions, or who do not see the government role in helping wage earners, working folks, at least saying it's okay to organize, they really want to turn the clock back to the 1880s, 1890s. Yes, corporations really did have free reign, but the free reign they had brought much turmoil in this country. And if they wish to turn the clock back to those days, that it will happen. Because what will happen is that corporations normally do not want to pay, or businesses in general, workers a fair wage.
They're Republican controlled, and it's strictly a matter of trying to get rid of unions and weaken unions. Because under federal law, under state law, the states can choose to be a right to work state. Under federal law, the unions have to provide the same protection for workers that are not paying dues as they are for the ones that pay dues.
Corporate greed. I think the corporations are making a lot of money, and in the past they would negotiate fairly and be able to trickle down that money, that profit money, to the employees. They develop good employees who work really hard at their jobs, and that extra profit is not trickling down anymore. The corporation CEOs make billions of dollars, whereas before they did not, but their workers are working just as hard.
The politicians are eliminating the middle class. If no one can see that, they have to be blind.
Because people are fed up with the way things are going with the government and the way that large corporations and big money people are trying to destroy unions. They're trying to kill us off. And we're just not going to stand for it anymore.
The economy will never get better until middle class people have money in their pockets to purchase things. And until the politicians realize that, then we're just going to be in this lull we've been in for the last 10 years. So somebody's got to get their heads out of their butts and let's get this country moving.
Go buy an American flag. Guess where it's made? In China. Made in India. I mean, they don't buy, it's everything you see. It's all made somewhere else. What about us people? The people that live in this country.
Side are you on? Don't scab for the bosses, don't listen to their lies. Us poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize. Unless we organize.